So the critics have been raving about Wonder Man, but let me ask you a question. Imagine you had superpowers that had the potential to create unimaginable destruction when unleashed. Imagine those powers were tied directly to your emotions, and anytime you felt too much stress, anxiety, or anger, they could potentially trigger and harm or kill innocent people. Would you, A, live in one of the most populous cities in the world and pursue a career that kept you in a constant state of stress? Or B, try to live away from people and minimize the emotional stimulation in your life while constantly practicing emotional control? Because one of those answers makes you hero and Avenger, Bruce frickin' Banner, while the other makes you the MCU's Simon Williams. While the comic version of Simon Williams did start out as a villain, he very quickly realized the error of his ways and sacrificed his life to save others, later being reborn as a hero and longtime member of the Avengers. But the MCU, Simon Williams, he is a selfish, resentful, entitled, impulsive, anxiety-ridden, neurotic asshole with a volatile temper. He's got the emotional maturity of a child, while also having one of the most dangerous powers in the entire MCU so far. He is literally a ticking time bomb waiting to go off across this show, who constantly puts himself into situations where he endangers countless people for nothing but the pursuit of his own ego. Which honestly makes Wonder Man fit right in with what we've been seeing out of modern superheroes in the Disney Plus section of the MCU. So let's take a look at the show that critics have been raving about, Wonder Man. The show starts off with a scene from the in-universe 80s sci-fi movie, Wonder Man. Besides the basics of his costume, this character has absolutely nothing to do with the Wonder Man this show is supposedly adapting from the comics, but you know what? Whatever. This scene is pretty dang fun. It's a scene of a sci-fi hero known as Wonder Man fighting aliens in space, filled with cheesy costumes and effects and melodramatic dialogue. And boy, I hope you had fun with those 2 seconds of this Wonder Man, because despite this show being called Wonder Man, and the premise being that they're remaking this Wonder Man movie in the modern day, all you're going to get across 8 frickin' episodes of this show is this one little scene in exactly one scene of the remake. That's fucking it. But come on, they couldn't waste valuable screen time giving us snippets from these movies that the entire show is based around. That would take time from the true heart and focus of this show. People just wandering around doing random shit. Anyways, we pan down to see that a young Simon and his father are watching this movie in a theater. You do the math quick and think, wait, so Simon's what, around this age? So this movie came out in the early 2000s? This looks way older than that. And it is. We're later told that this Wonder Man movie actually originally came out in the 80s, with Simon's father having seen it when he was younger. All right. And I'm sorry, but I have to say, this is supposed to be an 80s sci-fi movie. What the hell are you talking about? Dune, RoboCop, Wrath of Khan, Aliens, Empire Strikes Back, Blade Runner, The Terminator, Escape from New York, E.T., The Thing. Those are goddamn 80s sci-fi movies. This looks like it's trying to be some shitty knockoff of Star Trek The Original Series from the goddamn 60s. And even for 80s sci-fi movies that are self-aware campy retro throwbacks like Flash Gordon or Buckaroo Banzai, when it came to pushing the boundaries of effects, spectacle, and action, those movies were frickin' awesome. The writers clearly have no real connection to the genre they're commenting on, and couldn't even be bothered to research or take their own dumbass ideas seriously. And right from the start, if the people making this show have no idea what the hell they're even writing about, why the hell are they writing about it? And why the hell should we, who know and love this kind of genre, be expected to watch it? What's the goddamn point of any of this? Anyways, we cut down to see Simon watching the movie with his dad, and he seems to think, hey, this is pretty cool. And boy howdy, I totally agree. I would be so happy to be watching a straightforward action-adventure sci-fi show. But instead, Simon, I get to watch your dumbass grow up and whine for 8 episodes straight. Yep, frickin' E. We then cut to the modern day, where Simon Williams is an aspiring actor who spent the last 10 years trying and failing to make it in Hollywood. But now he's gotten his big break, getting a one-scene role in an episode of American Horror Story. Simon meets the actress he'll be working with in this scene, celebrity cameo, Ashley Greene. He tells her how much he loved her in the Twilight series. Not in the movie, in the series, implying that at some point Simon sat down and watched all of those things, assumedly while wearing a shitty-looking homemade Team Jacob shirt. In this scene, Simon is playing a professor who talks to Ashley Greene's character for one scene before she turns into a monster that immediately kills him. Just as they're about to shoot the scene, Simon calls over the director and starts giving his notes on a random backstory he made up for this one-scene character, complaining about the dialogue in the script and saying that it should be changed to match the random-ass backstory that he made up. The director just kind of says, yeah, whatever, I don't really care. Simon then goes on to critique the blocking of the entire scene, saying he believes his character would stand at a different spot on the set, and tells the director they should relight the entire scene for the spot he believes he should be standing. The director, for God knows what reason, kowtows to all of these demands, despite clearly not wanting to, wasting time relighting and reblocking the entire scene, at which point Simon still has comments on the notes and script, convincing the director to bring the writer of the episode down so he can go over his notes with her. Simon and the writer then spend time going over the script, while everyone just stands there wasting time and money for every second spent not shooting, until eventually a producer steps in, asks, "What the fuck is going on?" Calls showrunner Ryan Murphy, who just completely cuts Simon's character out of the show entirely, and Simon is politely told to get the fuck out of here. Later, we learn that this is not his first acting gig ever, so it's not like it was his first day on a set and he just got over-exuberant. This is just Simon's personality. He's a diva who thinks he's better than everyone and deserves to have the whole world stop for his brilliant thoughts. Now, to be fair, the director should be immediately fired as well. It's her job to get this crap filmed. Some random glorified background actor should not be halting filming for hours. But that does not change the fact that Simon is clearly a nightmare to work with, explaining why he's been failing in the industry for the last 10 years straight, despite some of the reasons he gives later on as to why he thinks he's not succeeding. Simon returns home and sees his girlfriend of years is moving out of their apartment. Which, if Simon is like this on set, I don't even want to know what he's like in a relationship. When confronted, she tells him he doesn't let her in, and that's why she's leaving. But as we'll get into later, I have other suspicions on why that is. Simon then goes to a movie theater and meets Trevor Slattery, who he immediately recognizes and goes to talk to, telling him he likes his acting work across multiple projects, including his time playing the Mandarin, the figurehead for the terroristic 10 Rings organization. Imagine if in our world, Osama bin Laden had been revealed to be portrayed by an actor all along, and had been imprisoned for his association with the real-life terrorist organization he had been a figurehead for. And partway into his sentence, he'd been suddenly broken out of prison under mysterious circumstances, and his whereabouts have been a complete mystery for about a decade. And then one day you go to watch, Anaconda, and you just happen to see Osama bin Laden just sitting there in the theater eating his popcorn and excitedly watching trailers. Would you, A, approach him and say, "Oh, hey man, I'm sorry to bother you, but I have to say I loved your role as the leader of an organization responsible for countless deaths"? B, just say nothing and watch your movie quietly. Or C, call the frickin' police. If you answered A, you may be Simon Williams. And say you did pick A, and you got to talking with bin Laden, and he happened to drop that he was auditioning for a remake of Flash Gordon this afternoon. Would you have no questions at all? As besides one character at the end of the show, no one ever thinks to ask him about this. And even when he's later casted in a huge Hollywood blockbuster by one of the biggest directors in the world, it's never portrayed as weird or controversial that bin Laden has been cast as Dr. Zarkov. What? Does Hollywood not do basic background checks on their... Oh, wait, never mind. Now, let me stop this negativity to say one actually very positive thing here. Despite my absolute hatred of the twist in Iron Man 3, Trevor is the highlight of this show. His arc and character is the most interesting and fleshed out in the entire series. His desire to gain one last role in the twilight years of his life so he can be known as something more than just the Mandarin is actually pretty interesting. And Ben Kingsley does a great job bringing layers and genuinity to this relatively simple, kind of stupid character, as he did when reprising the role in Shang-Chi. Had this show just been a spin-off about Trevor Slattery trying to make it in Hollywood after his checkered past, I'm going to be honest, I'd probably have enjoyed it. None of the problems with this thing are on his character. I genuinely like him. I'm glad I got to see him. Simon, however, upon learning from Trevor that there's going to be a remake of Wonder Man, Simon thinks, I need to be in this movie. And not only that, he thinks, I need to play the lead role of Wonder Man. So he storms into his agent's office during what looks like an important meeting with like 10 guys in suits and just starts berating her in front of all of them for not telling him about these auditions, demanding she get him in one today. Let's keep in mind, this is a guy who's been failing in the industry for 10 years straight. His biggest role to date is a one-scene character in American Horror Story season like 12, and he just got fired from that role a few hours ago. And you want the lead in a big-budget tentpole Hollywood blockbuster. Bro, I doubt you could handle being the guy eating frickin' nachos in a goddamn Taco Bell commercial. But he wants the lead role in this Wonder Man remake, telling his agent he was born to play this character. I'm sorry, Simon, but are you sure this character is the one you were born to play? You know, there's a couple differences. Why exactly were you born to play this character? He never really talks about the character. He doesn't seem to resonate with his story. The only reason that I can see that he wants this role is simply because he liked the movie. But then I do have a follow-up question, because the entire premise of this show is based upon the idea that Simon is very attached to this movie. But I have to ask, does Simon even like the movie? Because across the series, I don't see a lot of evidence that this is the case. The only poster I saw in his apartment was for Dr. Strangelove, not Wonder Man. It's not a movie he ever really brings up or talks about organically or even really geeks out about. He clearly liked it all right as a kid, but he didn't leave the theater with the face of a kid who had his mind blown the way a kid who saw Star Wars for the first time did and had his life changed forever. But looking through the evidence, I think I figured out why Simon connects to Wonder Man so much. And it wasn't the movie. The day he saw that movie was the day his father told him that Simon would be up on that screen one day, because his father believed Simon had true acting talent. And at this statement, Simon's face truly lights up, much more than the movie itself ever made him. Wonder Man itself does not seem to be that important to him. I think it could have been any movie that he happened to see with his dad that day. The screen was just a mirror for Simon's own ego, and the words his father told him set that ego on its path into the modern day. The reason he wants to play Wonder Man so much is not because he loves the movie or the character. It's because it would truly bring that memory of his full circle. He doesn't want to play Wonder Man the character. He wants to steal what the movie is to all its fans and completely turn it into what it always represented to him, which was a vision of his future self up on the screen, a mirror for his own ego. It's completely narcissistic, and everything I'm against when it comes to the writers, directors, and actors making this crap. Taking something that someone made out of nothing with love, creativity, and passion, and then just pervertedly repurposing it as a vehicle for your own flaccid, impotent little ego. So Simon busts in pissed that his agent did not tell him about the Wonder Man auditions. Instead of immediately dropping him as a client, as any sensible agent should, his agent has a relatively reasonable conversation with him, telling him that the Wonder Man auditions are going to be over in a couple hours, it's too late, and that she's not going to pull strings to get him in last second, since she already pulled a lot of strings to get him that role in American Horror Story, and he was only fired from that this morning. Simon hears all this reasonable talk and thinks, I was born to play this role. Sneaks into his agent's emails to learn where the auditions are being held, just starts driving like a drunken maniac, weaving through traffic at top speed while recklessly dialing up the people holding the auditions on the phone, and doing an impersonation of his agent's female Jamaican assistant to try to get himself a last-minute audition. With this impression sounding completely unconvincing and borderline offensive, causing me to really question Simon's supposed great acting skills I keep hearing about. Upon reaching the auditions, he's forced to sign a doorman waiver, legally stating that he does not have superpowers. Simon brushes it off awkwardly, implying to the audience, does he have superpowers? Which cleverly tricks the audience into thinking that this may become a superhero show at some frickin' point. Simon starts to get nervous, causing his eyes to start to glow as he tries to suppress his emotions and the powers growing within him, which, based on what we see later, if he can't, will lead to the death or injury of the other actors sitting around him. Simon hears laughter and sees Bin Laden, the Mandarin, has given a charming performance that everyone loved in his audition. He sees that Simon is about to crap himself in nervousness and gives him some actually good advice. To stop trying to be the frickin' writer, shut the hell up and just perform the goddamn lines. Simon argues a bit, but kinda takes his advice, calms down, goes in to give his audition, breathes in and gives a just fine, not particularly charismatic or magnetic read of the lines. The real-life actor doesn't really do anything to differentiate Simon and Simon acting as Wonder Man. He just talks with less emotion. That's about it. The actor playing Simon is inarguably a good actor. You ask him to do emotion, he's really great and attention-grabbing. But the show acts like I'm watching Leonardo DiCaprio's transition from the actor he's playing to the character the actor's playing in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. But that is not what we're getting. Am I being too hard on him? I don't know, maybe. If Simon was the only actor we saw in this show, I probably wouldn't question it. But we're putting him up against Ben frickin' Kingsley. That dude is completely captivating and intimidating as the Mandarin, even on rewatches of Iron Man 3 when you know the stupid twist. Anywho, after the audition, Simon and Trevor bond. Simon leaves, and then Trevor gets a call revealing he's working for the Department of Damage Control to spy on Simon Williams because they believe he has powers. Now, this was actually a pretty interesting twist, and it raised some really interesting questions. Does Damage Control often spy on powered American citizens? What would they do if they got evidence that one of them had powers? It doesn't seem like having powers is outlawed. Mutants aren't well known, and we know the Sokovia Accords have been repealed. So what happens when someone with powers proves to be dangerous in the modern MCU? Are they locked up, given power dampeners, put under watch? What does the current political administration and the people of the United States think about this issue? These and other interesting questions will all be revealed at absolutely no point in the future. This show is not interested in superhero concepts or MCU world building. We soon learn that Trevor was arrested upon returning to the US, and despite multiple witnesses that Ben frickin' Laden had departed a plane, entered the United States, and been arrested by the Department of Damage Control, this does not seem to be widely known info. The DODC then offers him a deal. Spy on Simon Williams and they'll waive the rest of his prison sentence. Now, why did they pick Trevor to do this instead of any other actor or the thousands of people working in Hollywood? Well, it's soon explained that it's because Damage Control wanted Ben Kingsley in this show. So they arrested the character he was playing and offered this deal so that they could market this whole thing around him being in it. So at least something's explained within this show. It turns out the casting director liked Simon's bland, generic read of the lines, and now they want him to film a self-tape of more acting to send into them. He spent some time trying to record it on his phone, and we get some hilarious scenes of him not really doing anything funny, but the show is edited as if we're watching an amusing, endearing montage, so I guess that's enough for some people to think this is a comedy show. Simon eventually gets frustrated. He then sees a video of his ex-girlfriend helping him on a previous self-tape, and he starts to get emotional. His entire apartment starts to violently vibrate around him as he tries to remain calm. But he can't, and an explosion of ionic energy goes off around him, causing massive damage to his room and shaking the foundations of the entire building. We learn later that this is a problem he's had since he was a little kid, with an early instance leading to the destruction of part of his childhood home. Meaning across multiple decades, he still has not learned to keep this thing under control. And as the show goes on, we continue to see a few instances of just how bad and dangerous these destructive bursts can be when he really loses his temper. So Simon is literally, not figuratively, a ticking time bomb. One bad day away from just exploding and killing God knows how many people around him. And he frickin' knows it. At the beginning of The Incredible Hulk, Bruce is on the run from the government, living in South America, trying and constantly failing to find a cure for his condition, working in a bottling plant alongside sketchy-ass people who threaten him and other workers, specifically doing meditations while a guy smacks him in the face so he can learn to keep his heart rate down under stress, being constantly reminded that he's lost his life and the love of that life. Even after the government finds him, ruining his cover and interrupting his years of experiments, starts chasing him through the streets with armed soldiers until he runs into some guys who start beating the shit out of him while the soldiers are shooting off gunshots. He still manages to keep control, begging for the people beating him up to stop for their own safety. But as they continually start kicking the crap out of him, then, finally, he loses control and transforms into the Hulk. Meanwhile, here in America, Simon sees a video of his ex and has trouble recording himself acting and loses control of his powers and sets off an explosion. One of these guys is a hero. One of them is Simon Williams. He calls Trevor to help with his tape, and they go on another hilarious sequence of finding where to film his tape, since Simon can't focus at home and just blew up half his apartment. Eventually, Trevor thinks of an old friend's house they can film at, with this friend revealed to be celebrity guest Joe Pantoliano, best known for his beloved role in Baby's Day Out. Think that joke's lame, low-hanging fruit? Well, it's not mine. It's this show's. As in his house, he has multiple posters for the movie hanging, with Simon taking a moment to awkwardly stare at one. So we can all see how funny the show is for putting these Baby's Day Out posters up as if it's one of his proudest movies. And later, Simon calls the movie out by name, so we can all laugh at stupid Joe Pantoliano for being in that stupid movie. What an idiot. Ho, 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 ho. You know, I think I laughed more at Baby's Day Out than I did in this show. Joe Pantoliano is portrayed as being super nice and friendly, letting the two of them into his house and seeming genuinely happy to see an old friend and helping out an aspiring young actor. Though he inadvertently does say a few things that could be interpreted as condescending to Trevor, if you actually listen, they clearly aren't meant to be. Since Trevor's been out of the business for a while, but he respects him as an actor, he assumes that he must be retired, especially since the whole being arrested on terrorism charges thing. When he finds out that Trevor is actually still acting, he's actually pretty happy for him. He also talks to Simon quite a bit, seeing that Simon is an actor who's trying to get things going and giving him advice from his lifetime of success in the industry. And he even has his private chef make them a meal. And how does Simon respond? He just starts fucking tearing into the guy, saying he's only pretending to be nice, but he's actually a condescending asshole, and saying that all the advice he's given Simon was the dumbest crap he's ever heard in his life, and that he and Trevor should get the hell out of here. Joe Pantoliano looks shocked, but even after all of this verbal abuse, he responds by saying, Hey, come on, guys, don't go. What's wrong? Showing that he's not even upset and would still let Simon film his scene in his house. But Simon still stays pissed and leaves. They then go back to Simon's house and just film there. This really makes me believe that the only reason he was able to give good performances before when his girlfriend was helping him was probably because he was able to yell at her. Because after yelling at Joe Pantoliano and going home, he suddenly has no trouble acting and is able to put in what I'm told by Trevor is a great performance, and then sends it in. Now, by this point, I was sick to death of this Simon character. I'd already given up any hope that it would be anything even remotely similar to Wonder Man before the show even came out. And after watching the show, I was getting really sick of this guy by this point. But there was still a character related to Wonder Man who I was incredibly excited to see adapted into the MCU, even at this point. And that's Simon Williams' brother, Eric. In the comics, Eric Williams is the professional criminal and supervillain known as Grim Reaper. He uses a technologically advanced and incredibly deadly scythe that shoots blasts of energy. He's a dangerous and badass villain who's faced Wonder Man and the Avengers many times. If you're doing a Wonder Man show, it is absolutely inevitable that Grim Reaper is going to be in it. And being that I'd already seen that Grim Reaper had been cast in this show, I couldn't help but get a little excited to see how they'd do him. I anticipated, sure, the MCU version was going to be different. He probably wouldn't have his over-the-top costume due to the MCU's more grounded nature. And that's all fine, because we'd already seen how a non-costumed, less comic-y version would look and act with its incredibly badass portrayal in Earth's Mightiest Heroes. I mean, as long as he's got the scythe, he's bound to be frickin' cool. Hell yeah, brother! Grim Reaper, let's get what? No? Instead of being a badass villain with a scythe, he's a pudgy, middle-aged guy who works in insurance. Huh. Simon goes back home for his mother's birthday and has to deal with his disapproving older brother. He's hard on Simon to an overbearing degree, but it clearly comes from a place of wanting to see Simon succeed. Simon's been trying to get the acting thing going for the past decade to no success, and his brother believes that he needs to give up and grow up, offering him a position in the insurance company he manages, something Simon has clearly declined multiple times and feels frustration at his brother for continually bringing up. This is how you choose to adapt Grim fucking Reaper in the MCU? What the fuck is wrong with you people? Who the hell would want to see some generic normal family squabble when we could watch a dude with the frickin' techno scythe fighting a guy with ionic frickin' powers? I kept waiting for some kind of revelation or twist with this, but it never came. And even at this point, upon seeing him first, I still naively had hope, like a moron. I imagine we'd maybe get a story where Eric does disapprove of Simon, and later in the show, in a time of hardship, Simon starts to agree that maybe he's not cut out for Hollywood, and takes Eric up on his job offer, giving up on his dreams. But it is soon revealed that Eric's insurance work is all a front for the criminal empire he's involved in, and he wants to recruit Simon to take advantage of his ionic powers for a criminal scheme he's planning to undertake. Simon realizes that his brother's holier-than-thou attitude is all a front, and rebels against him, even as Eric believes that Simon is being naive and childish, like he's always been while pursuing his silly little dreams. With both brothers eventually being forced to come to blows as Simon wants to do the right thing and turn his brother in, while his brother is enraged that Simon would betray him. And we get an epic fight between Simon, likely during filming while wearing his movie Wonder Man costume after later being casted, and a hooded, dangerous, and deadly Grim Reaper after he's lost everything that he'd built for himself. The movie falls apart due to the chaos. Simon is revealed to have superpowers, but people record this fight and see a seemingly real-life Wonder Man defeating a villain and saving everyone, making Simon an overnight sensation and a new superhero. Oh, but no, we don't get any of that. That would make this a superhero show, exploring superhero themes about superheroes. We couldn't have that. This is the Marvel Cinematic Universe, not some lame baby bitch-ass superhero movie for losers. So we explore an exciting, grounded, realistic, brotherly dynamic that likely comes from the real life of one of the writers instead. Oh, thank God. I was worried I'd have to feel excitement for a second there. Oh. We also meet Simon's mother, who adores Simon and doesn't care about his decade of failure or lack of a job, much to Eric's annoyance. At the end of the night, Simon gives his mother a fairly expensive birthday present. His mother is thankful, but Eric points out that Simon doesn't have a frickin' job and must have bought it with money his own mother sent him. Money Eric had given their mother to support her, pointing out that not only did this mean that Simon spent his own mother's money to buy her a present, but that Eric technically bought the present. with this being just another in a very long line of criticisms that his brother has been giving him throughout the day. And how does Simon respond to this criticism? Well, pretty much as any superhero would. He freaks out and slams both fists down on his mom's kitchen counter like a child throwing a tantrum, blowing it to pieces with his powers as everyone in the kitchen dives out of the way to protect themselves from the shattering debris. Simon then looks around angrily and just leaves as his mother cowers in shock in the corner. Now, the power aspect obfuscates what just happened a bit, but let's take them out. Imagine everything had been the same, and Simon then just got pissed at his brother and grabbed a plate and smashed it against the wall mere inches from his mother's head on her birthday. All just because he got angry. Would you like that character? Would you root for him? Would you think he was a good new superhero for all the kids to be looking up to? Simon is never punished for this action. He never apologizes for it or learns any lesson about why it's not okay. He just goes about the plot getting into goofy adventures with Trevor in the world of Hollywood as if this is a perfectly normal, reasonable, and okay thing for him to do. The next time we see the kitchen, it has been repaired as if nothing happened. His mother is not upset about it, and we don't see his brother again for most of the show. Simon Williams is a raging ball of emotions and takes it out on the people around him, looking down on them, resenting them, pushing them around to get what he wants. And when things don't go his way or people bruise his ego too far, he explodes with anger and frustration consistently across this whole show. And this is never portrayed as something that's not fucking okay. It's just portrayed as an interesting quirk of the character. Of course his mom adores him. She's probably scared of his emotional outbursts if she doesn't. Of course his girlfriend tried to sneak out while he was working. She was probably scared of how he might react if she said she was leaving him. The show portrays Simon as a funny, cool, easygoing guy with a dream who has trouble connecting with others due to his passion for acting and is just going through a lot right now because he's been down on his luck. But if you actually watch this show and pay attention, you see exactly the kind of fucking man Simon really is. Trevor had also come up to this birthday with Simon, being instructed by damage control to wear a wire to get evidence on him. Simon and Trevor are driving back home. Simon tells Trevor he got powers when he was young, and instead of talking about his guilt over what he just did, or about how dangerous he feels being a ticking time bomb, he tells him why having these powers really bothers him. Because Hollywood bans superpowers due to an incident that happened with Damar Doorman Davis, someone Trevor has never heard of. Now, Simon sucks ass, garbage character, horrible person, but Trevor is interesting here. He got evidence of Simon being a threat and having his powers go out of control. Then gets Simon on tape talking about those powers and admitting how dangerous he is. If he turns this in, Trevor's a free man. But Trevor's had a very difficult life. And like Simon, most of the bad things that have happened to him are the result of his own bad choices. So Trevor kind of relates to Simon, sees himself in him, and cannot bear to turn him in, as he's forming a kind of messed up bond with the guy. But more importantly, he sees Simon as a good actor, something Trevor respects more than anything else in this world. And so Trevor destroys the tape that recorded all of this, despite the potential ramifications to himself, and goes back with this man he's coming to see as a friend and colleague. So there's the first 3 episodes of the show critics are raving about, Wonder Man. Now some of you may be asking yourselves, how the fuck was that a Wonder Man show? Simon looks and acts nothing like the comics. He's not a superhero, and Wonder Man doesn't actually even exist in this universe. Every element of his and his family's backstory and characterizations are completely different. At this point, what in God's name makes this a frickin' Wonder Man show? This guy shares about as much in common with Simon Williams as he does with Simon Pegg. This show isn't as stupid as Echo, it's not as confused as Ironheart, it's not as annoying as She-Hulk, it's not as lazy as Secret Invasion, but Wonder Man is worse than all of those, not because of quality, but because it is the antithesis of a superhero show. There's no action, no costumes. The protagonist is a horrible person who never learns a lesson or changes across the series, and the show expects you to relate to and like this total raging asshole. This show may be the ultimate antithesis of everything I believe in and value in adaptations, while also being the antithesis of everything I believe and value in human decency. But on that happy note, part 2 coming soon, where we get to see all the stars. Josh Gad, Mario Lopez, and we get to see the Mandarin eat a candied mandarin. Ho ho! Anyways, there's my crash out on this show. What's yours? Disagree and think Grim Reaper is much cooler as a regular insurance agent? Think Simon is a cool guy? And hey, who hasn't ruined a mother's birthday with property damage? Come on, cut the guy some slack, man. Whether you like the show or hate the show, if you've listened this far, might as well like and subscribe. And if you want to support the channel more than just with those clicks and your eyeballs, I've now got channel memberships up, man. Join now and get to vote in monthly polls for an adaptation all subject to the 3 C's. Wow, what a deal. For everyone else still here, let's go wash our brains out by watching Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes, a show that does awesome versions of both Wonder Man and Grim Reaper stories, while changing their looks and characterizations quite a bit. Adios.